All right, it's time for that July wrap up. And if you've been following my weekly reading updates, my Friday reads, you'll know it's been a slower reading month. Although I still have read 10 books and the pages were around 3,100, which is my goal. It's usually 100 pages per day. It's definitely like 1,000 pages less than what I have been averaging the last couple months, if you saw in my stats video. But man, there were a lot of winners this month. So quantity of pages might have been low, but the quality was like really exciting. Like I think every week I was reading something I was really excited about, and it was all across genres. Like I read historical fiction, science fiction, fantasy, I read a nonfiction. So we're gonna go into it. If you're new to my wrap-ups, I split them into arbitrary categories each month. This month I'm going by genre because that's what my brain wanted to do. So we're gonna start with fantasy, since that is the genre that I read the most of, and then we'll go science fiction, historical fiction, and the nonfiction. I will, as always, have timestamps and affiliate links all down in the description if you want to find them at bookshop.org to purchase or to hop around the video. Do what works for you, and let's get into it. Fantasy section, I had 2 rereads this month, which was fantastic. The first one was Obelisk, which is the second book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I liked it way more this time around than my first time around, mainly because I knew what to be in for. I read it really fast. I read this in like 3 days. I don't remember how fast I read it the first time. Maybe it was just as fast, but I remember being like, oh no, I need to read this for a book discussion, which I'll have linked down below at Chloe's channel, where we discussed the book for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. It was a really fun time. And yeah, it's the second book. Don't really know how to talk about it. There's an apocalypse happening. You're following our characters handle the apocalypse, and also just like the struggles of life and family and drama. It's really good. I just love Jemison's writing. This book, the first time I read it, I was still thrown by a new point of view that got added in, and I still like cannot put my finger on why Nasun, as a character's point of view that we get, does not quite work for me. I don't think she's written in an unrealistic way, but I think I just am jarred by what this 10-year-old has to go through and how they process things, and I think I just get very stressed for her, and she's hard for me to connect to because she's 10 years old, and I don't think she's unrealistic, but I am 28, you know, and I'm not living in an apocalypse. Well, some may argue differently, but even if we are, this is a much more harsh apocalypse. So really awesome reread. Still love it. That's not surprising to me whatsoever. And then I reread Hero of Ages, the third Mistborn book. I still need to put together my thoughts for that video, or for a whole series video. I haven't decided yet. My filming brain has been all over the place, but this was like my third time reading this book. I still love it. The ending always hits. Like this time I was reading it and I was like, I don't know, I'm liking it, this is fun, you know, and then the ending I was like, every time. I was mentioning in my Friday reads that this one might actually be my least favorite. Like, it's still a 5-star read, it's still fantastic, the whole trilogy is really good, but I think like the first 2 books are a lot more character relationship focused, which is like my bread and butter in fantasy, and they both like, I don't know, have really good character relationship payoff. You got a lot of found family in the first book. We have a lot of character arc developments in the second book. And the third book is, I think by its nature, very like, we have to solve problems and get stuff done. So it's more plot driven, which is totally fine. But I kind of was missing a lot of those moments. Like I felt like although Vin is very much there, I get less of her. Like I was connecting to her less in the third book than I had in the previous ones. And I think that's because like her arcs have already happened and now she's just who she is and doing stuff. That said, there are great arcs for Sazed and Spook. It's just like, I don't know why, but whenever we're in that part of the book, it's never as interesting to me. And that's happened every time I read this series, is when we are in that location of the book with those characters, I am less interested. But man, especially like when you know more about the Cosmere while you're rereading them, it's great. So really enjoyed my reread of the first era Mistborn. It's fantastic. And I need to figure out what video I'm going to do now. I'm for sure going to do like a spoiler-free should you read for the series. I just haven't decided if I have enough to say for a Hero of Ages, like spoiler chat, like I've done the first 2 books. If you want a spoiler chat, like really bad, let me know, and that will encourage me. If you don't care, also let me know. These are useful things to let me know where to spend my energy, but I for sure want a spoiler-free should you read series review recommendation video thing. So those are my 2 rereads. And then I read one of the new hot summer releases in fantasy, She Who Became the Sun. I do have a review for this. And yeah, so this was a 4-star for me. Definitely a book I really liked but didn't quite completely love, and I think part of that was character connection, so take everything I say with that grain of salt. I am always a firm believer that character connection is subjective. There's an X factor. It is really hard unless you found your like reading partner soulmate to know when someone will or will not like a character, and even then there are misses. But for me, I really liked the historical context of it. So this is, I think, the start of the Ming Dynasty, which I know very little about. I feel like I learned it once in like 7th grade forever ago. And it kind of gender bends it. And it's very much the story of a legend coming into their own, which I like that. So in some ways, some of the plot beats can be predictable if you like, are into legend stories. But for me, I actually found that really comforting and cool. I really liked, here's a problem, and now our legendary hero gets to put another story under their belt, sort of thing. It's kind of that type of story. I do talk in the review about what I think of the tagline of Mulan and Song of Achilles, and I mean, it's marketing, guys. It's not completely off base. Like, it's not completely wrong, but it's also like, it's not the tragic love story of Song of Achilles, if that's why you like it, and the part that's Mulan is, it's gender bent. Like, our main character is a woman who pretends to be a man. But, like, otherwise, it's, like, a very different historical context, I feel. Like, the main character is nothing like the main character of Mulan. So I get why they did it, and it's not completely, like, the worst comparisons, but it's for sure a story in its own right. And I talk in the review video of, like, other historical war stories that I've compared this to, other different, like, grim settings, because that was something that was unexpected to me, is how grim this setting is. It is very dark. There's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of famine, there's a lot of war. It's very graphic in a lot of its descriptions. And yeah, I liked the main characters we got, but I didn't love them, and I think that's what made it like a 4-star read. Really solid, really intrigued to see what the rest of the series does, but not a 5-star. If you want more thoughts, there's a review. The last fantasy I'll talk about is A Master of Jinn. And I don't think I'm going to make a review video for this unless you guys really want one, because I don't have a lot of thoughts other than I really need to not read detective mystery stories. So I did not dislike this book. This book did nothing wrong in what this book was trying to do, but it's a very plot-driven detective story, and I just didn't care about those parts. The parts I cared about were when Fatma and Siti and Hadia were all interacting with each other and forming bonds. I really liked that, but that was really not the focus of the story. The focus of the story was, here's the mystery, we have to solve it, so now we have to go to X place to figure out this information and get that clue. And it followed a lot of the hallmarks of that genre, and if it was like a TV show, I would have eaten it up. But I think right now, where I'm at as a reader, I don't get as engaged with those stories. So although the writing was great, the world is stunning, like gorgeously described, I really liked the characters. The book wasn't leaning on the characters I liked, it was leaning more on the plot-driven part. And like, I also guessed what was happening way earlier than I was supposed to. So then any like type of drive or engagement was rough for me. So this is all like a genre problem and not like the book problem. But I've been really wanting to like the Cairo stories because everyone loves them so much. Like, people who have the same reading taste as me love these books. And they're just misses for me, I think, purely because it's that detective thing. What is really nice is if you are someone who is tired of reading detective stories that are set in the past, that are supernatural, that kind of have the noir feel, and you have to deal with the male gaze, that doesn't exist here. So if you really love that genre and you want a more like modern okay take on it, this is fantastic. Like, Fatma, Siti, Hadia, they are fantastic female characters to follow in this setting. The setting itself is gorgeous. I like the alternative history. I like the push against the imperialism that was happening at the time. Like, there's a lot of quality stuff that it's doing in that genre, if you like that genre. I'm going to say that me, as someone who typically does not like this genre, this isn't one that won me over. And I don't know. It was a bummer, because I really, really wanted to like it more than I did. But I didn't hate it. It's not anything bad. Just didn't love it, and it's not because the book did anything poorly. It's because this is a thing that does not engage me as much as it used to. So those are all the fantasy books I read. Now we're going to go into science fiction, which had some great stuff. Some real good winners. Well, we'll start with The Echo Wife, which I read in like 24 hours. Oh boy. So I was thinking last month, I don't like action-packed sci-fi, or I don't like thriller sci-fi. Well, this is a psychological thriller sci-fi, and I devoured it. I think some people think it's slow-paced. Again, I read it in 24 hours, so obviously it was engaging enough for me. I could not put it down, and then the ending had me putting the book down and like jumping around the living room and kitchen going to Ryan like, oh my gosh, the ending. Like, what just happened? Oh my gosh, ah. I like messaged Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany because I was like, you're one of the only people I know who've read this, and I'm like, whoa. Because in some ways, I think it's more than a thriller, if that makes sense. You know, like I was reading it for pleasure. Like, it was a book that just I wanted to read. I was like, what is happening? And then it had like so much to say at the same time, which I can't like go into. But it's a book that I've been thinking about purchasing, the hardback, so I can reread it in a bit. Because this is a thriller that is not dependent on a twist, I don't think. For me, there was never like a big moment where I was like, oh my gosh, except for, I guess, the ending. But it wasn't because it was like a big reveal. It was more like that's when the book's thesis hit me in the face. And I was like, I was not expecting that, if that makes sense. So it was more just following this character, and how much you like the character voice is going to be important, because I think it was first person, and you're very much in this person's head the whole story, and so how much you get along with that is going to be pretty important. I know some people were asking me in my Discord about how similar or dissimilar it was to Upright Women Wanted, which is the only other Sarah Gailey I've read, and it's very different. Like, extremely different. And I think that's the general consensus, is this book is pretty different from their other works. I'm not sure. But this book did have me wanting to read Magic for Liars, so that's hopefully happening within the next 6 to 12 months, because that one I hear has great sibling energy, and I am all about sibling energy. So The Echo Wife really impressed me. It was great. All right, and the next one was on the TBR. It was Escaping Exodus. Thank you so much to my patrons for making me read it, because I was planning to. I got this at a used bookstore. I loved it so much. I mean, I think what I've noticed is like Nikki Drayden is like a 5-star read until maybe like the last portion of the book, and then sometimes things ramp up a little too quickly for me, and so then it's like a 4.5, 4.75, but it's still a fantastic experience for me. So the premise of this one is we are in a far future human race experience. We live in space now. Earth is no longer an option. We live in space. Not only do we live in space, we live on space beasties that I think of as whales. But that's never actually explicitly said. I think that's just because of a Doctor Who episode I watched a long time ago. And you follow mainly 2 characters, and they live in different parts of the class system. And in some ways, this reminded me of Snowpiercer, the movie, but not quite as dark. And I will say, if you don't like intestinal descriptions, it's a lot in terms of like, you know, like, if you remember when I talked about the Stars Are Legion, it's got some squishy stuff. There's some orifices, there's blood, there's plasma, there's mucus, you know, those type of words are going to come up. It didn't really gross me out that much, and so I hesitate to say body horror, but it has those type of descriptors, if that's an issue for you. And they live on these ships, and we have one person who's like basically the heir, who's going to, you know, be in charge one day, and we have a worker. And they have this friendship, but also kind of this forbidden romance because they're on different parts of the class system. And we're watching this transition from one animal to the next, and all the complications with that, and them learning about their history and trying to figure out, you know, what's working, what's not working, how do we handle this? And I really, really liked it. I cannot wait to read the sequel. More people should read this. It's so weird, but it's so good. I really like weird sci-fi. And Nikki Drayden, I've already purchased now the last book I didn't have, and I'll get a copy of The Prey of Gods, which is the other work I've read by them. And it's just, their works are so entertaining, but so thematically good, and so weird. So weird. I really enjoyed it a lot. So, especially for a 300-page science fiction, I was completely satisfied. I was just yes. The only thing that I had was just that the ending felt a tiny bit rushed. I think this could have been 350 pages, and I would have automatically 5-starred. And even then, you can tell, I still loved my experience. I remember reading the first 100 pages on Rachel Let Me in the Library's reading sprints for her birthday week, and I was just guys, I love this story. It's just the world building, like that's another thing. The culture. I'm probably going to try and form some coherent thoughts for a review video, but like the culture, the exploration of that was really interesting and in some ways similar to what we have, but also its own thing, and learning about that, like I eat that up as like a world building driven reader. Like learning about that was fantastic. So that was another science fiction I read. The next one was The Undefeated. This is a novella that I've been meaning to read, and I liked it, but didn't love it, but it was perfectly fine. It was like 100 pages. This is a story of a very privileged journalist who grew up on a planet that was trying to be independent, but then was roped into the Commonwealth, I think it was called, but kind of decides to travel back to that homeland at the end of her life on basically the cusp of what's about to be this revolution between basically this cast of people that was made powerful but made subservient and the average person, I guess. And we're not focusing on that revolution happening. We're just like on the edge. It's about to happen, and we're watching this privileged journalist think about their past, think about how she got to this point in her life, and what is to come. And I thought it was fine. I think it accomplished its goal, but I wasn't that interested. So that's really all I have to say about it. It was cool, but like, I don't think I'll be thinking about it a month from now, if that makes sense. So those are the science fictions. Now let's talk about the two historical fictions, which were, again, awesome. The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich. I love Louise Erdrich. This is the second book I've read from her. I need to, like, for sure read 1 or 2 of her books a year because I love her writing so much. This takes place, I believe, in the 50s in North Dakota with the Turtle Mountain Chippewa tribe, I believe. And this is a time in American history where Congress is unsurprisingly trying to take away Native American rights. Shocker, I know. And so the Night Watchman is a character in the book based off Louise Erdrich's grandfather, who is writing to Congress trying to bring people together to fight back against this. Now, that's part of the story, and it's definitely a big part, but that's not all it is, because what Louise Erdrich does, and what she does phenomenally, is community building. You have so many other characters in this community. You're watching this whole community just exist. Sometimes it's day to day. You have, her name is Pixie, or Patrice, and her sister's missing, and they're trying to figure out what happened to her sister after she went to the city. But she's also working a job, and she's also trying to handle coming into her own as a woman and what that means for her and the relationships she wants to form with other people. She has a very contentious home life just on a baseline. So you have her, you've got like the white guy in town who like teaches people how to wrestle. You have a whole wrestling thing that goes on. The community is so vibrant, and that's a thing that she did in another book I read by her, La Rose, and I love it, and her writing is stunning. There are parts of it that I think some people would associate with like magical realism, because there is a huge part of this story that has to do with people's connection to their faith, and the faith is both Christian and based off what the tribe believes in, and sometimes that comes across as fantastical, but I read it as these people believe that this is true, and that's why they are interpreting what they're seeing the way that they do. I really loved it. I cannot wait to reread it one day, because that's what I feel with her works. It's like, oh, this was so lovely. I could just sit in the prose, and I loved seeing this community, and I know I'm not taking everything in. There was a character that didn't show up till like halfway through the book who I loved. Her name's Millie. She was fantastic. I just really liked this story, and it highlighted a part of history that we literally don't talk about. Like, ever. Like, I'm not surprised that my government tried to do this, but I didn't know about it, and they did do it successfully for many tribes. So that was one I read, and then the other one was Hamnet, and I had no idea what this was about. I was reading it for book club. I listened to the audiobook, because there was no way I was getting my hands on a physical or an ebook of it unless I bought it, which maybe I could have, but I really liked the audiobook, so I don't have regrets. And this is... I kind of put it in a similar class as like historical retellings, because it's about Shakespeare's family, specifically the loss of his son Hamnet, which is thought to be the inspiration, I think, for the play Hamlet. And so there's some things that are known about Shakespeare's life, but the book itself never even says his name, because I think that's something, and someone who's a Shakespeare buff can correct me, because I love Shakespeare, but I'm not like a Shakespeare like aficionado or buff or anything like that. But you can let me know if I'm wrong and we do know his name. But We know a bit about who he married, how many kids he had, what his father and family life were like. And that's basically the historical context. And then the Black Plague, or maybe just the plague, a disease that people didn't know how to stop and was spread easily via fleas and things like that, came to the town and caused the death of Hamnet, which again, the author even says is an artistic interpretation because the actual death of that kid might not have been the plague. And it takes place in two timelines, the timeline of the kids being exposed to the plague and the history of that plague, and the past with Shakespeare meeting his wife, starting his family, and how he became a playwright. And that part is so romantic and sweet, and I just fell into the story. I was so captivated by it. And then when we switched to the more like present day stressful arc of the plague and disease, that was engaging in that way. So I had these two engaging forces throughout the entire story, and then you get to explore grief. I really liked it. I would be interested in exploring it again, so I have thought about buying myself a copy. We haven't had book club yet, but I'm really excited for that. It was just beautifully written. I thought it did a good job of just taking a framework of what is known and then putting like I said, it's in my head reminds me of retellings like A Song of Achilles, even though like that's based off a Greek myth or something like that, like where things are based in what is known and what we have agreed on, but kind of twisted and more meant to be a story that you fall in love with, because that's kind of what happened to me. And so yeah, I read that, really liked it. Like it was a really great time. It was one of those audiobooks where I was like, I need to clean so I can listen to it, which does not happen to me all the time. Sometimes audiobooks, I only finish them because it's like, well, I could listen to the audiobook or listen to nothing while I walk to work. But that wasn't the case for this one. So those are the historical fictions. And then I have one more book to talk about. It's my nonfiction. This is Conflict is Not Abuse, which I will be on a live show on Jess Owen's channel on August 14th, I believe at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll link it down below if I have a link, but I'll for sure list that down below in her channel. I'm sure you follow Jess Owens if you followed me. But this is her first book for her nonfiction book club. I primarily listened to it. And as I've said in my weekly updates, I don't have a huge issue with it, but like, I agree with a lot of the sentiments, but I didn't love the execution of the sentiments, if that makes sense. I just felt it was very disjointed at times. I felt like some of the anecdotes weren't as helpful as she thought it was. I thought she was saying we need to do things with nuance, but then her text wasn't very nuanced. I had a lot of issues. I'm excited to parse it out in a discussion setting. It was not a waste of time. It's just not my favorite nonfiction experience. I didn't mind it though as an audiobook because it was very podcasty. The author monologues a lot. And although I didn't really love all of the anecdotes she puts in, they did make it a very readable experience. I just didn't always think some of the examples she used made sense. I don't know. I'm very lukewarm on this nonfiction. So that's all I read this month. It was good. It was a good time. Lots of books that I just really liked. Like, it was just really fantastic. And I'm excited to see what I get to in August. I have that TBR video up, and I'm just itching to get done with all of my other chores today so I can read more of them. Let me know what were your highlights for July, you know? Did you read something you really loved? Was there something that you were like, eh? Did you end up not reading much, but you did something else that was super fun? Let me know. I want to know all the things. And if you want to leave an emoji, oh, let's see. Leave. I don't know if there's a whale. I kind of want you to leave a whale for Escaping Exodus. So I'm going to say that. But if you can't find a whale, get creative. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.